What's going on, gang, and welcome back to Scared of Normal. I'm Mike Murphy, and today we're stoked to welcome the Dean of Denim, the Jort Lord, and the founder of Ripton and Co, Elliot Wilkinson-Ray. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It's rad to be here.
Yeah, I'm super stoked, dude. And ever since I met you, this has been an episode that's been in my mind, and we made it work this week. So this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah. It's been really fun to kind of get to know you just in the last 8 months and seeing the movement that you're creating from a distance and sort of getting little touch points. So it's really exciting. I
appreciate that, man. And the feeling is mutual. It's cool to follow along with everything you guys are doing. And for the listeners right now, if you guys are not following Ripton on Instagram, definitely go do yourself a favor because you guys are always posting so much fun stuff. So yeah, I appreciate it. So for those who are unfamiliar with you, if you met a stranger on the street right now, how would you describe who you are and what you do?
Ripton makes performance denim. So there's a lot of crazy fabrics out there that I started exploring over the last couple of years. And they just make denim a little more comfortable, a little more insular, a little more breathable. And I was working in the bike industry and felt like things were a little serious, kind of like we were talking about before, a little synthetic.
Yeah.
And wanted to bring that kind of skatey, more casual vibe to things. And denim is the most rock star, the most kind of, loud, organic material and or fabric. And so that's kind of how I got into that, and it's just been one thing and then the next. So
heck yeah. Well, that was one of the questions I had, was just where did the idea for denim come from? But you just answered it, so that's super cool.
Yeah, I was living in SF, working in apparel, and it's just kind of where Levi Strauss started and had a lot of cool, there's little cut and sew denim things going on. I had a boss who worked at Levi's and was making really cool commuter jeans, and they were just comfortable. I mean, we're talking cone denim, like the American Mill, with a little bit of elastane, a little bit of stretch, with the gusset, and just kind of jeans that are really comfortable but looked really cool.
Sure.
And just wore in well. And I started cutting them off into jorts, and they were just kind of a little louder, a little spunkier, and that just set me down a kind of wormhole of exploring denim.
That's rad. What year was this when you were working out there?
That was 14, 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Coming up on 10 years. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. Heck yeah. Well, let's throw it back to, where did you grow up? Where did it all start for you?
I'm from northern Vermont, a little town called Richmond, Vermont.
Okay.
And it's a really small community of just kind of little dirt roads, rolling hills, maybe kind of backwoods areas around here.
Sure.
Had an hour ride on the school bus to school every day.
Whoa.
Just a lot of different little towns combining into union, more regional high schools and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty, pretty good childhood. And all my time was outside. Didn't do a lot of indoor time. So I think that's what's brought me to where I am today with, biking and skiing and stuff.
Totally. And did you grow up riding bikes, or was skiing your primary thing back then?
Yeah. My dad got me into biking when I was 8. I was born in 1986. So the late 90s mountain biking boom was a big deal. Everything was hardtails, and
oh yeah.
It was go out and do the XC race on Wednesdays in the pouring rain. Vermont rains a lot. And I loved it from the first time. My first race was in the pouring rain. I loved it, and kept doing it. There wasn't a lot of support for bikes in high school, so I sort of kind of dropped off in high school a little bit, and then in college kind of picked bikes back up again. But kind of 90s version of all this stuff, it wasn't built out the way it is now.
Yeah. Kids these days, man, they have no idea how good they have it, right? Especially when you talk about not having the support in high school. It's the fact that you can get a college scholarship in high school now for cycling is absolutely bizarre to me. It's so cool. But yeah, it's changed a lot.
Yeah, it was kind of a quirky fringe thing. A couple kids from our high school did it, and they went big. But you were kind of on your own if you wanted to pursue mountain biking or cycling.
Sure.
There was like a club or something like that, but it was really kind of casual.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing like to incentivize you for going a little bit bigger than that. So,
No.
so as winters rolled around, were you stepping into skiing a lot then? Or when did you find skiing? Because I know that was a big thing in your life.
Skiing was much bigger. Well, not much bigger, but it was bigger because it's so cold in Vermont and it's just long, cold winters. So, we had a little ski hill in our hometown, and it was sort of like free daycare for our parents. We were just, kind of like the way I see the skate parks around here, and just a place to go, or like Valmont or something for kids to just go screw around. But it was just sort of where we went and got lost and just had all our friends, and it was completely uncontrolled kid time, which it's harder to find these days.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's kind of a rarity in the world we live in now, to just be kind of raw and rugged with your friends and running around and falling down and learning some life lessons, man. That's not as common these days. Although kids are very fortunate. You just talked about Valmont Bike Park over there in Boulder, and they're starting to pop up everywhere. So maybe it's coming back around. I kind of dig that.
Yeah, I think when kids can play with each other and not have a parent around and just have to kind of be a little independent self and interact, it's just, I don't know, it's like my favorite part of being a kid.
Yeah.
Being in your own little world.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, making the most of the fun that you get to have is so cool. Were like, when you were growing up, did you enjoy school? Was that something you enjoyed doing, or were you just looking forward to getting back outside and enjoying the outdoors?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty ADD in a lot of ways. I liked school in certain ways, but I think the longer it got, the more it got into the older ages, and the longer classes got,
yeah,
the harder it got for me, the more I wanted to just be running in circles kind of.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, man. So at what point did you move away from the hometown? What was the first venture outside of that?
I moved to California when I was 26 or 27. When I finished college, 2010-ish, the economy was still kind of in shambles from the great financial crisis. Vermont doesn't have a lot of jobs anyway. It's really one of our, I think it's its second smallest economy.
No way.
And it's very liberal. So industry is very taxed. So it's there's some great companies based there, but they're fighting an uphill battle. And so I wanted to work, and I was getting really into mountain biking and bikes, and I wanted to move somewhere where I could get a job in cycling, mountain biking, making content, photo, video stuff, and moved to the Bay Area and did a lot of freelance, and then ended up working for a company called Kitspo that was like high-end cycling clothing. And then my brother and I worked for Columbia Sportswear a lot, traveling and making videos and stuff. So yeah, that got me out of the state.
That's super cool.
A leap. I didn't have any like commitments going into it.
Heck yeah. And what did you study when you were in college?
I studied community development in sort of like economics, basically.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of the stuff that you studied then playing a role in what you're doing today? Or do you think a lot of the stuff that you learned today was kind of through those jobs and just kind of, self-taught?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot more of what I take into my life is from life experiences than school. I think the only thing that maybe I take away from school is that I've always liked to read a lot. So I still read a lot. And that helped just like force me to do that. To kind of sit still and try to read. But yeah, very conceptual. School is so conceptual that I feel like, I started getting into video. So I'd use the University of Vermont computers to like use, Final Cut and stuff.
Sure.
Like start getting into that stuff. But I didn't take any classes in it. That was just a resource that the school had. That's
cool. That's cool to be able to like kind of sidestep and like, this is actually what I want to be doing. So the resources are here. That's awesome. So at what point was it, you just mentioned that you were working for Columbia and Kitspo. What point was it where you were kind of starting to look at like fashion and clothing and wanting to pursue that avenue?
I just kept going to, like, I liked telling other people's stories. Like I liked what these companies were doing in certain ways, but I kept going to Outdoor Retailer and going to industry events and feeling like there was a lot of replication of what other companies were doing. Like, and I know there's a lot of pressure in a job and in a big institution, but, you know, it's amazing. I mean, let's commend the outdoor industry for making, you know, super lightweight insulated jackets and Gore-Tex, and everything they're doing is amazing. But to me, I kind of it just looked like all the same in certain ways. You know, maybe some people are doing a little thing better than others, but I was like, man, I kind of want more soul in apparel, and I want more soul in like the fabrics that are being used. And I don't want to follow anyone else's rules. I don't want to make another puffy coat. I don't want to even use waterproof fabrics if I don't have to. I like the street style elements of cycling that are more expressive and creative. It was fun to get to know more of your BMX community because they just do that intuitively. You know, they're just wearing the clothes they wear every day around. And I think, you know, coming from a skiing background where there's more status and wealth around skiing, it's really fun to see that raw, like, you know, just being yourself, and just is sort of like really approachable fabrics and sense of identity. That's not like this costume you put on for your sport. It's just who you are. And it's really simple and pure because it's just what you're wearing, and you're just going to go rip in it.
I love taking that back to the soulfulness too, like that pureness and the soul that goes into, like, you can show up, you know, at dinner in the clothes that you wore, you know, riding your bike or whatever it was. And I think there's something special about that. That's super cool. I know you've mentioned in the past that you like drew inspiration from your childhood experiences skiing in Vermont when developing Ripton. Can you like describe a specific memory that sparked the idea for some of the stuff you're doing with the brand?
You know, our little mountain was the most podunk one in the kind of more modern snowmaking era of ski areas. So there were a lot of blue collar people skiing there. We were kind of, I would say, lower middle class, my family, but there were a lot of people that had less than we did, that just skied in Carhartt, and everyone that worked on the mountain worked in Carhartt and jeans and that sort of thing. And there was some real class divides based on what you wore and what you could afford. And my family kind of worked hard to fit into what was that like middle class sort of look, getting me a hand-me-down ski jacket or skis. And the more I think back on that in that time, the more I think it's just kind of silly and ridiculous that we put so much time and money and energy into trying to be better than other people or sort of look wealthier or kind of be in this rat race. So I love skiing, and I did a good amount of ski racing, but just a really expensive sport. And I called it I don't know who came up with this, but it's an arms race, like who can afford the most, and if you can send your kid to New Zealand for the summer, they're going to have better odds. And I'm sure biking has elements of that too. But the arms race was just really aggro kind of mentality. And so I think seeing all that, feeling like I never fit in that sport, made me want to kind of show you that, like, we always tried to like treat every kid like they were the same, like they were as good as anybody else, even if they were the worst kid at skiing. And I love that mentality at our little mountain. And I always thought, you know, just you don't need to be so fancy with the things you do.
I love that, man. Yeah, that's a good way to approach it. And when you say that, I can really see that in everything that you guys have done so far with Ripton. It's a cool approach because it's funny you say, like, you know, you see the people on the mountain who are, you know, dressing away to kind of fit in. And we were just having that conversation the other day. It's like, it's very hard to go far in a sport like skiing or snowboarding if you're not living on the mountain, if you don't have the parents that can afford you to like have like a private tutor or something. Like, that's the level that these people are playing at now. And it's I don't know, it kind of ruins the fun of why it started. Like, when you talk to the people who were the pioneers of skiing and snowboarding, like, they are disgusted at kind of what's going on now because they were just out there smiling and having fun going down a mountain.
Yeah. I think culture gets created from combinations of different backgrounds and different people being creative together and having really, really approachable spaces. If a new type of music is happening, or a new sport, it's usually from people kind of rebelling against the old and doing this in a really affordable kind of non-gentrified space. And so the more you elevate something into the super elite, the less culture is there inherently. So I think that can be a big problem.
I love that. That's really good perspective on that too. That's awesome. So you're talking about going to outdoor retailer, you're kind of noticing all these brands doing the same thing. How did you start figuring out or aligning with what you wanted to do, and how did you start developing that skill set, since you didn't really, you just said you didn't go to school for it? So how did you start saying, like, I want to start, making my own apparel?
I think it was maybe a blessing that I didn't have any apparel experience, because I had to ask for help really early on, because I'm a marketer. I have some skills in photo video stuff. I'll kind of be the martyr and try to do everything. And from running Traction that trying to do everything has a limit, has a ceiling of what's possible, even if it's part of the founder sort of journey. And so luckily with product, apparel, I got to go ask a lot of people for help right away and just kind of be like, this is what I want. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm feeling. But help me make that happen. And apparel is a huge global system now. So you need to work with other people.
Heck yeah. Did you find that it was very collaborative when you were going out and asking for help from people, or were there a lot of doors kind of shut in your face when you were kind of getting the ball rolling?
Oh yeah, a lot of doors shut in my face. It probably would have helped if I had gone to school for this kind of thing and was a little more in the industry on the actual product side of things, just because I didn't even speak there's a really cool shop language around clothing. But I don't know, nothing too crazy. I would just kind of go to LA and visit all the factories and go to see the laundries. Denim's interesting because it's made from a fabric. The fabric looks almost black when it's woven, mm-hmm. and then it gets put through these crazy laundry rooms where they wash it down to give it they're basically starting from black and washing down to blue, and whatever amount of blue you want is what they're sort of achieving. So that's a really cool sort of distressing process that goes on.
I did not know that, actually. That's
yeah,
really
and I would
crazy.
always ask the mills, no, I want the blue denim, and they'd send me this thing and it'd be kind of black, and they're like, no, that's denim. You just need to do this thing, and then it looks like a pair of Rockstar blue jeans.
Sure. Whoa, that's crazy. Heck yeah. So what was were you looking at other brands at the time, kind of picking and choosing, hey, I kind of like what these guys are doing? Were you looking up to any sort of designers at the time, as you're going through the process of kind of looking at what you wanted to do? Or were you just putting the blinders on and saying I'm going to create my own thing?
Yeah, I'm getting more into that now. I mean, the idea of just a really comfortable, stretchy jean short that is awesome to wear and looks kind of, dirtbag and frays in nicely and holds up. It's a pretty simple concept. So you really just need to find the right fabric and then get someone to make it for a price that's reasonable so you can actually run a business through it. So I wouldn't say I had a really specific fashion sort of mentor or brands that I thought, because it was just kind of a really weird idea, but now that we're starting to make more products, it's really fun to kind of see what else is out there and kind of feel more of the intersection. I feel like I'm now more in I started in a little spring of a river, and I've sort of flown down the river till I'm kind of in a bigger flow, and I'm in running into a lot more people and inspiration and things. So it's all kind of combining and bouncing off of itself.
That's really cool, especially coming from a product that in reality is pretty niche, becoming, especially now that more people I feel are starting to wear that style of clothing too. It's cool, I'm sure, for you to see the inspiration from other brands, maybe kind of picking up on what you guys are doing and being able to riff on one another. Is it hard when you see other people kind of picking up on what's going on?
No, I think Man, apparel is just a form of self-expression. So having more people in performance denim is good. We want to kind of show people that they can think outside the box. I think seeing everything, we're next to like satellite skateboard shops, seeing everything the skateboarders are using and buying and iterating on. I had a snowboarder from China come in on Friday and buy my men's XL or double XL, and he was really small, so it was just really insanely wide fitting on him. It's just kind of fun to see. Yeah, it's fun to see what people are trying. And then this sort of workwear revival that's going on right now is, I just talked to the guys at Stan Ray yesterday. Some of these painter pant or like kind of classic workwear things are really coming into swing. And I'm just in this sort of incubator early stage. So it's just fun to watch these trends come around and see what's resonating with people, resonating with the kids that are a little younger than us too, you know?
Totally. Does it feel cool to be in such a young stage compared to some of these big brands and be able to like adapt to these trends a little quicker? Because like when you're a big company, you know, it's so hard to turn the ship. But when you're small and nimble, like you guys are right now, you're able to adapt. So are you kind of like adapting to trends that are coming, or are you just kind of trying to ignore those as they come along?
Yeah, I'm trying not to run towards the extremes of the trends too hard, because we can't make things fast enough, and the bigger players have manufacturing really figured out, so they can react to things really quickly. But I also don't want to be caught what I feel like is totally offsides, like completely, you know, what no one wants. I mean, you could go out of business that way if you did that in too extreme of a way. So you have this really interesting intersection of what you're feeling inspired by, what you want to make, and then what the kind of more macro trends are. So I think we're trying to stay within a range where some of the trend is getting captured by what we're doing, but we're not running towards the newest, quickest, fastest iterating one as fast as possible.
I think that's awesome. I think that's a really great way to approach that too, as opposed to like kind of jumping on the flavor of the day, because that stuff does fizzle out. So there's a lot more longevity in that, like kind of staying in the middle of that arena. I think that's really cool. So what year did you guys officially start the Ripton brand?
It was like fall of 2019.
Okay. Heck yeah. So you got the ball rolling right before all the craziness started.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I didn't have any money, or I was really broke at the time. And I had about 100 friends or 200 friends pre-ordered jorts from me.
Whoa.
So that's how I got like the money, and sold those immediately, and then tried to reorder, I think 1,000 pairs of a couple different colors, men's and women's. And then the factory like shut down, and I didn't get those. I had a lot of hiccups like in that early stage, just trying to get product made.
Yeah.
That was really excruciating. When you're really in that early stage, you're so sensitive, you know, you're like, oh my God, this is the end of the world, you know, because you're excited too. So, you know, things still go wrong, but you know, they usually just, some things go wrong. Not everything goes wrong, you know?
Yeah. How did you go about, like in those early days, you know, as you're looking to start the brand, finding somebody to produce the jorts for you? Like, what did that process look like, finding a manufacturer that you felt comfortable with? And
yeah, just don't give up, you know, with not giving up with like leads. Just keep following leads. Like you were talking about, kind of meeting the next person from the next person. Just a lot of that.
Yeah.
Because no one factory is going to be right for a bunch of stages of your business. Maybe when you get bigger, it's like, we use this one factory for this one garment for 20 years or 50 years. But when you're really small and you're growing, you're going to sort of evolve. The right answer has been changing really quickly for us.
Sure. How has that process looked like with manufacturers? Are you know, I'm sure from the beginning to now, you've probably gone through a few people to find like the right one. And like, was that a tough progression? You know?
Oh yeah. That's the hardest part of the business, because it's international for the most part. There's no more denim mills in America. So you can't make denim in the US anymore. So a lot of our denim comes from Mexico. A good amount of denim comes from Asia. Our jorts are currently made in Turkey, because they have some really cool fabrics over there. but there's bad duties. So we're a tiny business, but we're navigating global supply chains and duty tariffs and drama. Like when the war in Russia or Ukraine started, our jorts were in a shipping container kind of near that waterway, and the boat was held for like an extra month. So you're like in the middle of the whole system, the whole machine, and I don't know. Business is definitely built on trust, and the factory doing a good job, delivering roughly within the range of when they say they're going to deliver, being honest, not sending over a bunch of faulty goods all the way across the world, which is super annoying. Yeah. We've run into a bunch of problems, but a bunch of things have gone well too. So the relationships where they're just being straight up, this is probably how life works in general, that are kind of showing up in a good way and doing a good job, they just keep building.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the approach of business and transparency, because I feel like that makes really strong relationships. And so I'm sure, especially with language barriers and cultural barriers, like finding people that align with what you guys are doing and understand and can deliver, like you're saying, is a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
What is one of the biggest mess ups that's happened along the way? Like, have you gotten a full container of stuff or whatever that's just wrong?
Yeah, I like when you have a pocket on the outside that's like a contrast that sets out from the rest of the 5-pocket jean look. Mm-hmm. It's kind of loud, kind of spunky. And one factory took that fabric and instead of putting it on the rear pocket, they sewed it as the pocket bags, and it was really thick and heavy.
Oh,
so
on the inside,
pocket bag of your short would be really thick and kind of uncomfortable. And it was I thought super clear and obvious. And we had samples we sent them with that we had hand sewn this hickory, really cool hickory stripe fabric on to samples to see this is what we want, and they sewed it into the pockets, which is just really weird.
Oh man. So did they remedy that, or how do you go about fixing something like that?
Not really. I think if you're bigger, when it's some guy in a guy in his suitcase kind of thing level of a business,
yeah,
you just don't have a lot of leverage with these factories. They're working with the biggest companies in the world. And so they don't, unfortunately it is kind of, sometimes they show you fair respect and kind of do what they can. But a lot of times they're just sort of sorry, and they still want you to pay for it. And you're like, wow, I don't want to pay for that,
Dang, that's crazy. And I'm assuming being smaller, you're probably having to pay for it before they release it. Is that kind of the game?
A lot of times, yeah. Terms are really hard when you're new. And we have pretty bad terms with a lot of factories. We're starting to get a little bit better terms with some, meaning we can pay later. But I don't think apparel brands grow a lot without some pretty good terms with their factories.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like that's probably a tough thing to negotiate being the small guy.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about, a factory sewing a pocket on the inside, we love to talk about, failure on this podcast. And, is there a failure that comes to mind throughout starting Ripton, or where you guys are currently at, that was one that was unexpected, completely threw you off, and how did you navigate coming back from that?
Yeah, the failures, the manufacturing part is probably the hardest. When you're small, they're not just going to take you very seriously. A lot of factories want to do millions of units, mm-hmm. Or hundreds of thousands of units, and we'll make, a couple hundred per color. And so I've had jorts that I thought were going to be there in July, delivered in December, in the middle of winter. I've had stuff, just get stuck for a long time periods. And I've had, weird faulty sewing. We do overalls, so the overalls have elastic straps. A big problem with one of our factories in Turkey has sewed hundreds of our straps backwards. So the straps are actually rolled onto the front, and they look stupid, and you can't sell them. And so we've been just fighting with them around chargebacks for all these mistakes. We got a whole batch of Duraflex buckles because we have these really cool kind of ski bib buckles. We're trying to kind of elevate overalls the way ski and snowboard overalls would be, but in denim. So we used really nice buckles, but we got a whole faulty batch where like as soon as you open the buckle, it just breaks in half. And so that's just like a 50-cent piece on a garment that cost me $100 to make. And you've just ruined the whole garment because it's this very finely sewn elastic and we don't have the ability to fix it.
Dang.
So just a lot of things like that. I didn't really have a lot of product during COVID. So I like kind of would sell out and then just be waiting for like months and months and months and months. So like waiting for 5 or 6 months. I didn't have employees at that point. So I didn't get any of that, like the money printing from the government, kind of giving a lot of people money. So I think a lot of things have been just really bootstrap. And I worked construction. I worked at a ski school and I parked car out. I was a valet boy at a hotel. So I worked a lot of other jobs just because, you're selling one pair of shorts every couple of days. You'd starve to death,
Yeah. What was the most interesting job that you worked during that time, do you think?
I really liked construction because it's so physical. You get out of your head and just so tired at the end of the day and just watching how things, maybe because when you're building a business, you're building something. Mm-hmm. So you're sort of building a building and, bending rebar, and I'm not very good. Like I'm not very experienced construction guy. So I was like always kind of the what do you call that? Like the day laborer kind of guy.
Sure.
And I like that physical challenge of like just moving a lot of dirt or concrete or stacking bricks or I would stack cinder blocks with a lot of Mexican folks that had snuck across the border, and I speak Spanish, so like they're telling me their stories of how they're sneaking across the border and stuff, and just kind of like raw and cool. And then you get to go like work on your brand, kind of get out of your head for a little bit.
Heck yeah. That's sick. So what was the turning point from getting out of doing the day laboring stuff or parking valet? Like at what point were you like, oh shit, like this Jort thing is working?
It was more out of necessity because when COVID hit in that March, all those jobs ended. Like they all ended. So I was just kind of sitting there and had a lot of time on my hands. We kind of all had a decent amount of time when that first COVID wave came. And so I was like, okay, let's just put all our energy into this and see what can happen, which is one way to do it. I wouldn't tell people that's the only way to do it, because I think when you're doing traction and I'm doing Ripton, it's very creative. Mm-hmm. So it's like a creative act, and trying to force your hobby, your creative brand hobby, into something you can live off of is really hard. And the commerce side of it, the money, the bean counter side, can take away from that pure kind of creative part. So I just did that maybe out of fear or like didn't have a better option, but I wouldn't say that's the only way to go. Now, over the last couple of years, I've tried to reinvest in the soul of the business and the purely creative side, and creating cool experiences and content and not just the how much of these things can you sell kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that you touch on that too, because I think that is something, especially when most people go into business. I think it's changing now, but I think previously a lot of people were going into business to make money, and I like that wasn't your approach. You're not like, I'm going to sell 1 million pairs of these and get rich. You're like, I'm doing this because I believe in it. And there's a lot of beauty and soul in that approach. And it almost is hard when it starts making money and you start, bringing on employees, because of exactly what you're saying. Like, is this losing its soul? Like what I'm passionate about, like you're having to do all the different things now that, you didn't start out doing. So,
yeah.
But it's cool to hear kind of going back to the beginning now, and you're like, okay, let's reinvest back into the soul of this business and prioritizing that, because I think as things grow, that's you see, businesses fail because they take their eye off of what the core of their business was. So
yeah. And business is so creative because you're trying to create something that the world doesn't have that you think it needs. And so it's so imaginative. I think founders are highly creative, highly kind of energy driven, like driven by motivation from ideas and visions and their imagination. And so when it gets into, oh, we need more pallets of this, how high can we stack this? How much money do we make every day? that will start to stifle that creative side. And so I don't know. I don't have the perfect answer for it, but I do know that in the big world of business now, I'm always around the big bike brands and the big companies, and a lot of times they've been bought and sold a lot, and it's easy to lose that soul. Sometimes I'm sure it's very anecdotal for everyone in their interpretation of a business and a brand, but it is easy to lose that soul when 8 different people have owned a company. And I've seen them get bought out and still feel pretty cool and core, but I think when you're driving it yourself, it's a lot easier to still maintain that, like, ooh, that's a unique brand. They're like doing stuff really weird and different. And
you kind of start to lose, like, especially during acquisitions, you start to lose sight of who you are. Yeah. You know, especially a business. So, you know, I think that's really cool to touch on this. And, you know, what are you guys doing? Are you guys having meetings about this to like kind of check in to see where you're at and making sure you're resonating with your original message? Or is that just kind of like, you know, when you're laying in bed at night and you're like, okay, like this messaging does relate back to like our core values?
Yeah, luckily we're only like 5 people in the office each day and maybe 7 total. So I can still sort of, everyone takes the lead. Everyone sort of follows the lead of the founder, and it's all based, a lot of that's based on my priorities. So if I'm able to sort out my own head, you know, over the weekend and on a ride after work and kind of make sure I'm focused on the right thing, then the small little group of people will also be sort of like, oh, let's like, you know, let's make sure we focus on culture. Let's make sure we, you know, make things that we ourselves think are awesome and want to use. Let's make sure we get out of the office a little and meet other people and, you know, cross-pollinate with crazy ideas and like all those things that, you know, if some huge venture capitalist came in and was trying to tell you what to do, you know, you might have a hard time being like, hey, I got to go like feel the vibes in LA for a little while. And they're like, why? And you're like, well, I'm like a creative, I'm a founder. I like want to see what's going on. I want to feel inspired. And they're like, that, I don't know if that's going to move the needle for us. You know what I mean? The way you guys are riding, going out and doing it's Thursday, right?
Thursday night. Yeah.
You know, Thursday night things. If you had some kind of ominous fund that invested in you, they might be like, no, that's stupid. Like you can't do that, you know?
Yep.
So I think that's what keeps it cool and raw.
I love that. Yeah. It's a good perspective to have. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. You know, we know being an entrepreneur is hard too. So like, you know, as you're talking about going out and like feeling the vibe somewhere, going out and riding your bike, like what are ways that you look to like re-energize or fill your cup up at the end of the day?
I'm still kind of trying to figure that out. I'm like 3.5 years in, and I do have a tendency to go all the time on one thing, but I would say a bunch of Ripton adventures that are not about the commerce side of the business, but might be more about storytelling and meeting new people have been super energizing. We just did a road trip from San Diego to San Francisco in an old car we bought from a dude, and just kind of rode and met a lot of people along the way. And those give you those touch points to kind of see how people are feeling about your brand and your product, and kind of just also be inspired by the world, like all the little hole in the wall burrito shops in California and the beautiful sunsets over the ocean. And it's been the wettest winter in a long time, so the dirt's really rich and dark and the trees are really green. Like those little adventures, I like when it's hard for me to put the business down for too long, so I kind of like when it's interconnected with the brand.
Yeah.
But it's like an adventure. Maybe like I had so much fun watching all the Florida videos from you guys
when we were down at Swamp Fest.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the beauty, and I've talked about this on this podcast before, but like the beauty of business, right, is that you get to create your own utopia. So being able to weave your passions in with the business, I think is very important, because like you're saying, getting to go out and experience the world and do really fun things, but you're also promoting the business and getting to live the business. I think that's so important. I think that's something, again, that's kind of overlooked in modern business, is that people create products, but they're not actually using the product. So when you're out there like driving around this car in your products, like promoting the products, riding bikes. Like there is something to me that is so unique about that. And it makes me want to support brands like that. And I love that.
Yeah, you need to be getting energy from the world and feeding it back to other people. If you're just in a vacuum, you'll sort of atrophy.
Sure. Along that trip from San Diego to San Francisco, do you have any favorite moments, or did you have any conversations with people where you're like, this is exactly why we're doing this?
I liked a lot of the California has that, despite it being so expensive and so wealthy, it has a lot of this kind of laid back attitude that still, especially like in the more surfy towns, exists. And when they bring that into bikes, I love how chill it is. So they'll do group rides where they just sort of like cut through weird little back alley paths and kind of like jib off of stuff on all different kinds of bikes, and go watch the sunset with a group of 30 people or something, and bring a little mushrooms or some beers or something and kind of like get a little buzzed and just sort of explore. I find Colorado can pull that off, but sometimes we get a little too caught up in like how fit we are, how fast we are. And so that I want to have more of that here in Colorado, more of that, just like, oh, we're just going to sort of like going for a walk with a friend where you're just sort of going to have a chat.
Going out to have fun. Yeah, and I think that's a very important thing. We talked about this before we started this episode, but a lot of things like you're saying is like, people are going out to see how fast they can be, and it's like very competitive. And I do see a lot of that happening here. And it's always been interesting to me because it's like, let's get back to the core of why we're doing this. We all picked up the snowboard or the bike or whatever it is to go out and have fun. And there's a time and a place to go fast and be competitive, but I don't think it's every single day, and I think we lose sight, and we also, our lives aren't as fun when we're going out competing every day. Like, go out and have some fun and enjoy it and remember why you do the thing you do every day, and then go be competitive, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When you're like driving your car around, you're not absolutely smashing the RPMs trying to drive as fast as you possibly can. You'd probably kill yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like turning on a good song and like just going for a cruise with your windows down, it's like, you can do that on a bike, you know?
And I almost think that is, for me, like I lost a lot of sight of, my bike riding career because I tried to take it too seriously in the last like 3 to 4 years, where I'm like, I'm just going to have fun with this. I've been having so much more fun. The sessions are awesome. I leave smiling, and before I'd be mad because I couldn't do something, and I think like exactly what you're saying. It's like, yeah, you're going to crash and burn if you keep trying to do that. So
yeah,
have some fun.
Creativity trumps competitiveness, and in business and in life, like it always will win out.
There's a saying that we always used to say growing up, because I transitioned out of like racing BMX into more freestyle stuff. And me and my buddy Matt Cordova, that as well, we always used to say style over results. Like that was the thing all the time. And it's kind of fitting here, it's like, have fun, do your thing, but like the results will come through that most likely. So yeah. I know you had an 86 Westie that you helped create the Ripton brand, right?
Kind of.
Like a character almost.
Almost sunk my financial life, but yeah.
Were you living in the van?
I have. I lived in the van in California because California is so expensive. Mm-hmm. And it's also a good climate for living in a van. Like the temperature swings aren't so high and low. Colorado's, I think, harder for living in a van.
Oh, totally.
It'll be really hot during the day and then really cold at night. But yeah, I'm not super handy with that kind of thing. So I was always, it was kind of a money pit. But I invested a lot in a new engine and made it pretty dialed and then gave it away.
Yeah. Was that a hard thing to part with?
It was hard. It was hard. When you're starting a company too, it was worth about $20,000. So I just wanted to give it to somebody and then just foregoing like the value of the sale, when you're scrapping, you're barely covering payroll. It's a little scary, but it was also just really fun. Yeah. It's fun to let go of things in life.
Heck yeah. Yeah, and it's cool to see it go to somebody who's going to use it exactly for what it's been intended for and like in a similar way to what you've used it for, I'm sure too. So
yeah. The guy that won it lives in Austin and is just a rad guy and is super handy with vehicles. So I think that's a better climate because it's like more East Coast, like humid, like not temperature swings aren't so extreme.
Heck yeah. Something, riffing off of that, like, the community support around Ripton seems absolutely incredible, both like locally, nationally, and globally. How have you cultivated and like maintained those connections, and like how do you continue to grow that?
I think people like to know who started something, kind of. And I'm not really this is about the most outwardly sort of, founder kind of thing I would do. But people still know the story, that I started selling jorts out of a little studio apartment and stacking boxes and shipping them myself and writing everyone's address on the packaging and that kind of thing. People like that, I think we do live in this very like numbers, money-based world. And so like knowing a bit of the story and a bit of the origins, makes people feel better about, investing in a business. And I think that's good. And I thank everyone out there for doing that for me and for Ripton and everyone that works there. And we should try to do that with our purchases when we can. If you can buy Traction instead of Starbucks or something like that, you're making the world more interesting instead of more uniform. So
that's a good way to look at it. We always like to say too, it's like, vote with your dollar, work with the people that you believe in and the companies that you think are going to make the change that you want to see in the world. So in that same lens, like, you don't want everything to be unanimous and be the same. And because life gets pretty bland and boring when it's that way. I mean, we've all been to these shopping centers that are full of corporations, and it's just like, man, like this is everywhere. Like this is just, copy and pasted everywhere. And I think there is a lot of beauty in like a founder, like owner operated business, and the fact that you come from such a humble place and now you have this beautiful facility over there in Boulder. Is that a weird thing for you? Like walking into that building now, is that a humbling experience when you look around and you're like, whoa, I came from a studio apartment and now I have a warehouse where I'm doing this out of?
Yeah, there's lots of little kind of weird moments where like your brain is like kind of maybe off, off in another universe. And then you're like, yeah, you're getting a giant shipment of stuff, or, everyone's asking you to like approve something. You're like, wait, oh my God, I'm like the boss here. What the heck? That's like not right. I shouldn't be the boss,
Who put me in charge?
Who put me in charge of all of this? Like, I just want to go over here and like, chill and do creative stuff. So I don't know how that'll go for me because I'm not really a very hands-on manager. I'm starting to manage a lot of people, and I really enjoy watching them grow, but I don't give them a lot of direction. I'm kind of like, all right, help me figure out email marketing or something, And so I think I'm pretty bad. I'd give myself a pretty low score in managing people. And I think that's why a lot of these creative founders sort of move off to the side eventually and kind of let some more like coach type people that like kind of organizing people and projects come in. And I don't know if that'll happen with me or not. But
yeah. I do believe there's a lot of beauty in the way that you're approaching it though. And I think it's really hard. I was actually driving somewhere yesterday and this thought was going through my head of like, seeing some of these businesses that, come online and they just grow so rapidly because they have this very strategic plan and it's so rigid in the way that they're like managing people. But it also kind of stifles like the creativity. So being able to approach it from the side that you're approaching it from, it lets the brand be expressive and fun, and it grows in a very organic way. And I think that makes the best type of company. So that's really cool. And like going back to what you said earlier, like, reading books, are you reading any type of books or like doing any exploration of like, can I become a manager? Do I want to become a better manager? Is that anything you're exploring, or you just kind of letting it roll?
Yeah, I read a lot. So I feel like I get so many mixed messages with the things I read, and I try to kind of I try to take everything with a grain of salt, because everyone's story is unique. And some people, you know, Henry Ford will be like, oh, everyone's just a cog in the wheel and don't be friends with your employees and just, you know. So some really successful people will have, and like, or like Steve Jobs was like kind of an asshole to everyone. And like, I'm neither of those ways of dealing with people. So a lot of really successful people are going to do things completely different than you. But I like reading about it and kind of like getting little anecdotes. I think I like to give people a lot of freedom and a lot of flexibility to kind of succeed or fail or try things.
Yeah. That's another big thing too. It's like, I think letting people fail, because like, think about the amount of failures you've had as the founder and how much you've learned through that. So like, and especially when like an employee fails, you know, then you're just like, okay, well, we can pick up the pieces and move forward. And like, now we know what not to do there. And you can like maybe, you know, train somebody differently in the future. Like, I think that's really cool learning moments, you know?
Yeah.
Going back to like books, do you have a business book or anything that has resonated with you the most, or just any book in particular that's like kind of changed the way that you approach things?
What book do I want to talk about? God, I mean, I love the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson. I think the guy just absolutely lived for. He was totally one-track mind person and maybe a little bit of a narcissist, but he absolutely focused on what he what he cared about, which was the business and like all the little details and the big picture and how they all came together and simplified really complex things. So kind of getting his manic energy through that book is such a fun thing. I love to like I was looking at it yesterday, just kind of like rereading some stuff. And, you know, it's hard to compare yourself to that because he was right at the intersection of like the computer explosion. So he's building a lot of wealth and, you know, that's not really what Ripton's doing, but some of the soul, the like being a passionate creative and trying to bring a great passionate group of people together to make things they really liked and cared about and wanted to show to the world. That's just you can replicate that in anything you do. So
totally. I think that's a solid one. I mean, I always say this, but like Steve Jobs is probably one of my favorite founders for that reason, because he obsessed over the small details. And, you know, the small details always make the greater big sum. And that's, even if people aren't consciously recognizing the small details, people pick up on them. And I think he hit the nail on the head when he realized that. And like, you can't knock the dude because he's created a device that is the most used camera in the entire world. You know, when you look at the achievements that he has done throughout his course of life, it's pretty impressive. And like, you know, people say that he was an asshole or whatever it was, but like, it's impressive at the end of the day. And I think he's a really good person to look at as a founder. And especially when it comes to being a caring creative about what you're doing, I think he did it really well. So that's cool.
Yeah. I also read the Johnny Ive, the designer, there's book. And I couldn't really get into it at first. For some reason, I don't know. It just like, it fell into my life at the right time. And then I read it on a plane ride, and it was just like perfect. The way they talk about kind of, you know, really creative, you know, going to find sea glass off the coast of San Francisco, and they see that sea glass has kind of that kind of blurry element, and that's what led to that like kind of turquoise IMAX screen and like all these things from nature they'd pull in and just like bring into their design room and have tables kind of like this where they would just lay everything out. That book's really cool too. It goes like deeper into just the design side of the business. Yeah,
a lot of intention put on stuff. And I also believe that makes great business too, is like putting intention on the small details. And like, obviously you can't overthink too much stuff when you're trying to move quick and be small, but I think approaching things with intention is so important, right? Because a lot of people are just like, we're going to make this, going back to kind of like the trends we were talking about earlier. We're going to make this because people want it, and we're going to sell it, and we're going to make money. And it's like, yeah, but there's no equity in that, you know, like to me, that doesn't feel good. I want to be intentional about the way we're approaching things. And it's cool to see you guys moving in that direction too. And like, I mean, even just like your guys' approach to not taking things seriously, like that's so freaking dope. And like, yeah, can you tell us more about like how humor plays like a role in the brand? Because you guys are always having fun and doing like just fun, silly, quirky things. And like, I think that's awesome.
Yeah. There's a lot of tension in that because, as you know, running a business is really hard and it can be kind of serious. But not having fun, not taking yourself too seriously. I think it's part of the friction that we have with how we're social. We're social creatures, and so we tend to sort of iterate, and sometimes there's too much sameness, like we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like there's a lot of mental experiments we can do to sort of try to break the mold, so to speak. But in general, I think having fun is a great way to do that. Getting yourself in creative spaces where you're like able to screw around and try things differently. I don't know. We're not meant to live life in a way that's too serious. We're such creative beings. So like we were kind of bringing up a little bit, like the mountain bike industry can be very rigid, and you've got this sort of like iterative, like look like this pro or look like that pro and sponsored by this thing, and it's kind of boring in that way. I think one of our jobs, I think we're sort of doing something that's meant to happen in some ways, and our job is to try to do that well. You know, if it's meant to happen, then do it well. You know, and then we're in this environment. American culture can be kind of go and kind of serious, and you know. So we'd like to kind of question those things. And I think that's what creatives do well, like question kind of the status quo.
Certainly. And I think that's why initially I was so attracted to what you guys were doing with Ripton, is that in a world of seriousness, you know, life is, for some reason, we've created life to be so serious and we all adhere to that. So then when a brand or a person approaches that with a like, hey, let's actually just have fun because like life doesn't have to be so serious. I think there is something really unique about that. So it's cool to watch you guys navigate that and like pull people in. And like, I mean, it even goes down to all the people that you're working with. They're all having fun and it's portrayed really well. And I think creating that, like, it's just this like linear playing field of everybody just really stoked and having fun. And again, that's just not something that you see a lot in life. So when you see a brand being like developed around that, it's you want to pay attention and you want to be a part of it. And it's really cool. So props to you guys for like making that culture happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Likewise. I mean, I feel like watching you guys ride bikes and shred the BMX bikes. It's like you're trying kind of like in certain ways, or maybe trying harder other moments, you know, some moments than others, but it's just seamless and it's just sort of like what you want to be doing. And I feel like when work becomes more like that, more like play, it's so cool. And I don't capture that during all of my day. I have some things I really don't like to do, but when more of your day is just feels like you're in a flow state and it's like fun and you're just like playing with, you know, what products you want to make, how you want the marketing to look, and but building a business, that's such a cool synergy.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done, but
yeah, definitely easier said than done. But when you do achieve it, it is that unique flow state of being able, like, I've been describing it lately as like, I feel like I'm just floating some days because I'm just like, this is so cool to be able to have really fun conversations with really unique people. You know, we just redid this whole roasting space out here. We have like a disco ball going on. It's just fun having people in and out and like, you know, roasting really great coffees, kind of same thing for you guys, putting out products that you want. It becomes this floaty feeling where I'm like, oh, wow, it feels like true freedom. And it's like really, I think the first time I've experienced that. So when you get into that state, it's very unique, right?
Yeah, that's so cool. That gave me that made me imagine sort of like building a house or something, the way you sort of get a little scaffolding or a little framing set up maybe. And you're like, that doesn't really look like much. And you kind of, maybe someone passing by doesn't even understand what's going to happen there. And then when like more pieces start to come together, it starts to all make sense and build something really beautiful. And I feel like the way you've got these really cool, you know, groups of friends and riders around you, and it really like you were saying, you grew up here basically, right?
Yeah, right here in Main Street, Longmont.
So cool. You've got your core, like your community where you grew up, these people that are passionate about doing the same things you're doing, and then these other like founders that are sort of like mentors and stuff. That's like those different walls of like the house kind of like all coming together, and then all of a sudden something clicks and you're like, dude, this is like actually happening and coalescing and adding to like greater than the sum of the parts, and changing your life, you know?
Yeah. Do you find that as a founder, it's tough to explain your vision to other people before it's realized? Like kind of talking about the building of the house, when like people look at it and they're like, I don't understand what you're trying to build there. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, you're halfway done and people are like, oh, I get it now. I want to like be a part of that. Like, do you find that being difficult sometimes? Like when something's in your head and you don't know how to like verbalize it or, you know, put it on paper? Definitely.
I think things happen really quickly in your mind and in your imagination, and they happen really slowly in the real world. So that trying to reconcile that inconsistency between how long it takes to actually get something done, for me, has been really frustrating as a founder. Like, oh, I want this tomorrow, and someone's like, you can have that in 2 years. I go, oh, damn, you know? And so, yeah, I've had a lot of people in my life kind of be like, dude, are you okay? Like, you're just selling jorts to people? Like, are you gonna be all right? You know? They're like, that's crazy and like not good, like not a real thing, you know? And are you actually like succeeding at this? So I've had a lot of people kind of, I don't know if it was with doubt or skepticism or just kind of like wanting to know, but they'll be like, what the heck? And I'll be like, yeah, I don't know. It is kind of weird. And I'm just living in a little 300 square foot shack and just doing it. And then now that we have, you know, a warehouse and more people and we have more products, and it's still a tiny, tiny thing. And in the grand scheme of things, you know, a lot of businesses will do in a day what we do in a whole year. So we're still really small. But it is sort of happening in some ways. And then people kind of go, oh, yeah, okay, I get it now. Oh, you've got a jacket, you're doing something like this. And like, you know, so it is fun to like, you just have to paint that picture really slowly with reality.
This is something too, I love that you touch on that too, is like, this is something I've told people that are just getting into starting a business or, you know, seeking to be a professional athlete or whatever. It's like, you really got to build that foundation and your passion as solidly as possible, because there are going to be a lot of people who question or don't believe in what you're doing. And sometimes that beats you down, and sometimes you start to question. You're like, wait, should I be doing this? Is this the right thing? And being able to fall back on that foundation you've built for what you believe in is really cool. And like being able to push through that threshold and seeing people turn from not necessarily like haters on what you're doing, but like from non-believers to believers. I think that is one of the most fun things about early stages of business, is seeing people go from questioning to being like, oh yeah, I want to be a part of that. And it's a cool thing. And I mean, personally for us with Traction, I saw that happen right around like a 3-year mark. And it went from being easier to sell coffee to strangers to our friends started buying coffee, which was kind of a weird thing. I was like, how is it that we can sell coffee to a complete stranger halfway across the country or in another country for that matter, but it's hard for me to sell coffee to people I'm hanging out with every day? And like, then there was this massive shift.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. So
I've heard that from a couple of founders' biographies. Actually, that's a funny effect. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just because the people around you, like,
it's kind of
they do care about you, so they're questioning. And
I think it's kind of like how when you're like in high school or stuff and you're growing up and you're changing, but your town's like, oh, that's little Elliot. You're like, you know, they see you as the same little person.
Yep.
And you're like, but I'm this now. You know, and they're like, well, I can't reimagine you in this whole totally new way. I think that is part of human nature, you know, whereas someone else experiencing from another part of the country where you've like changed yourself and evolved a lot as a human, they're just like, oh, this is you. This is the only you I know.
That does make sense, because, you know, somebody who's just discovering you at that part in your journey, they get you there, or they get the business there, versus like your friend who you started the business and they've watched you grow and they've known you through that whole journey, and exactly what you're saying. I think that that's a good, very valid point. I love that.
Yeah. And that's what's cool about being able to sell things to people in such a big country is you can resonate with people anywhere.
Yeah, 100%. Another thing that I really love to talk about on these episodes is like the sacrifice involved with creating a business. I know that like over the course of, your life, you've had to put some stuff on the back burner, or like quit partying or whatever it was. So do you have any sacrifices that really stand out to you as like these things that really propelled you forward in your career?
I think a lot of making anything happen in life is focus, and focus is really hard for people like me who are so easily distracted. And I think a lot of it, not to say there's only one type, there's so many different types of personalities that found and start businesses, but some of the more creative, zany ones are usually pretty easily distracted. So trying to take that energy and put it into one thing all the time is really hard. And for me, it just meant saying no to a lot of stuff. All your friends are going on a trip somewhere, or like everyone's going to do this, or, I got, pretty deep into the party scene in my, like late 20s, early 30s. And just kind of Xing out a lot of stuff, just saying, no. It could quitting your job. I quit my job. I quit a bunch of jobs, but I quit kind of the serious jobs. And that can be really hard too, like being kind of not feeling like you have a lot of, what's that called? Like identity and self-worth, because you were like this title at a company and then you're just nothing, and you're like thinking about doing things. That's like, at dinner parties and stuff, that's not really like a great place to be. You're kind of I think those are the hardest, when you're thinking about doing an idea and you haven't quite done it yet, and you just feel really like you're only known for the things you've done, not for the things you've thought about doing.
And you like develop that imposter syndrome a lot in those moments, I feel like too. And it's tough when societally we've been taught, right, that we have to have that job, and like that your title is kind of who you are. And so I'm sure, as you're navigating quitting like a corporate job, you're just like, okay, now who am I? And like retraining your brain to realize like that you are capable of really incredible things, even though you don't have this title, which in reality is somewhat meaningless, right?
Yeah. I guess you make sacrifices when you start a business, because you don't really get to leave work ever. You're always at work. You're always working in your mind. You're always working on something. That's a real trade-off. Like if someone was going to decide between, I'm going to go do my own thing versus work for someone else, there's something really pure about leaving your day working, pounding nails, and just going for a ride, and like you're just free.
Yep.
So that's a real sacrifice and a real trade-off. I think certain people have their personalities work better for that. And you need, like you said, like how do you get away? How do you escape? How do you go on a ride or hang out with a cool friend or something? Because you do need to recharge still, even if you're always thinking about your thing.
Yep.
But that's a sacrifice, and then just so much unknown risk that might not even feel like risk to you, but to other people, they're kind of terrified. Like, my now wife would always be like, well, do you think you should get a job? If you're selling $60 a day, or, less than that, $60 every other day, your partner is not going to think you really are onto something.
Yeah, for sure.
That stuff is, and then now, just, it's sort of like raising a kid or something. You're kind of on call all the time and just kind of working on it. And I know people start businesses like way later in life, but damn, that's impressive, because I do feel like the kind of like relentless energy is pretty important.
Yeah, I do think relentless energy is super important. And I love that you touched too on like trying to get out on the bike ride or have that escape where your brain kind of turns off for a minute. Do you find yourself stumbling across great ideas when you come back from those moments of kind of just like freedom while you're out riding your bike, or if you go up skiing, like you come back and you're like, oh wow, like I didn't think for a second, that 30-second run or whatever it was, and now there's an idea that comes in, or there's a clarity on an idea. Do you ever find that?
Yeah. I've heard like people in the bike industry talk about getting all their ideas on bike rides. I'm not quite like that. Like, I feel like maybe I'll get an idea on a bike ride, but Elon Musk talks about getting all his good ideas in the shower in the morning. Like, I feel like, but I do feel like there's some element of maybe like this, like what we're doing, like conversation or motion, like movement in your life. Maybe you're on a flight, maybe you're driving into work, something about movement that can kind of free up ideas or new adventures, novelty, like being on a new trip, going to Swamp Fest or something like that, where you're riffing with someone that's kind of cool and different, and you see something that kind of jumps out to you and you go like, ooh, I like that. That's cool. I want that. Or I want to integrate that into what I'm doing.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I like that. Like, you really are creating through experience, I guess, at the end of the day. And if you're not going out and experiencing new things or talking with new people, you probably get stuck in a feedback loop, right? Like, I know for myself, when I'm trying to create something or trying to name something for that matter, I'm sitting there just like banging my head against the wall. And like, it is always like mid conversation, or like I'll be riding and I'll like pop out of the ball and it's like, boom, comes to you. And you're like, whoa. And it's like almost keeping it so simple and not trying too hard to do things like that. When, don't force the ideas, don't force the process, and be patient. And you talked about that earlier. It's like, being patient, having to wait 2 years for something to come to fruition, how hard that is to do, especially when your brain works the way your brain works. It's difficult.
Yeah. Do you, I've been sort of like mentally thinking a lot about momentum and how you harness that. Do you ever think about that as a concept?
Yeah, I love the idea of momentum. I always relate momentum in my life back to riding a single speed bicycle. And so I think about it a lot. Like, when you're climbing up a hill on a single speed bicycle, if you stop, you're going to have a really, really bad time. You know what I mean? Because you can't downshift to the lowest gear. So you have to keep pedaling even when you're on those plateaus in life. And so when you hit that next hill, you have the momentum to take you to the top. And so, yeah, I love the idea of momentum, especially when you can relate it back to something that's familiar to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then it seems like you've got a lot of cool friends that are kind of intertwined in traction. Is that part of the momentum for your business, or how?
I think so. Like, it's cool. Like, I've been saying this a lot lately, and it's a really odd thing, I feel like, to kind of vocalize, but it's cool to see like this kind of critical mass starting to form. And I feel like, again, that's something that's happened through the patience and being like diligent about saying like, this is who we are. We're going to be this in an unwavering way. And people, even if they don't like drink coffee, they start to like, come around, because it's like this idea of real, recognize real. It's like, we see that you're doing what you want to do in a way that you're not compromising. And so we have these really cool people, whether they're artists or bike riders or entrepreneurs, kind of coming around and like respecting what's happening. And it's a really cool feeling, and it's very humbling. You know what I mean? Like, to see people accumulating and like coming to hang out. And like, I remember looking at, like, there's this guy that used to shoot for a magazine down in Denver. And I remember the first time, like, we took him bikes to his, like, he had a warehouse that he lived in. And I remember going in there and I was just like looking around like, whoa, this is the dream. He had like a desk in the middle of it, and he would talk about these warehouse parties that he would have, and like had his photography studio in there, and he had like a Porsche parked in there. And I'm like, dude, this guy's living. And the other day we had a bunch of people in here, and we had the disco ball going. We're listening to music, drinking beers. And I'm like, whoa, had to step back for a second, right? And like recognize like we're doing that thing that I looked at 10 years ago and thought was the coolest thing. So those moments are like the humbling things, and like seeing the people who choose to align with what we're doing. It is just like, it is so humbling, dude.
Yeah. I like that. I like that idea of creating a culture of sort of authenticity and creative purity, where people that are kind of identifying with what you're doing are sort of like gravitating towards it. That's like, there's not a lot. I mean, I shouldn't say there's not a lot of that, but it's not a super, you don't see that everywhere.
Yeah. And that's like, remember growing up too, and like kind of looking around and seeing like people that I thought were doing really cool things. And I remember like reaching out to them like via email or Instagram or whatever, trying to like make these connections. And I felt like they were always missing for a really long time. And I think that's kind of where that authenticity comes in. It's like people who have done it or are doing it, like if they don't sense authenticity, like oftentimes they're like, I don't know if I want, like, I'm glad you think what we're doing is cool, but like, I don't know if this is going to be like the best like relationship. And so now I'm kind of seeing that in my own world where it's like when people reach out or when I reach out to people and they see that there is a lot of intention and authenticity behind, you know, the conversation or what we're doing. It's this really cool meshing of things, even if they don't seem like they would work together, I think is really cool. And I think, you know, even this conversation and like the relationship that we have, it's like, you wouldn't think a coffee company and a jort company, performance denim company would be coming together, you know, and like we've talked about doing collaborations, but I think there is so much, you know, synonymous energy behind what we're doing that it's really cool. And it's like, we can kind of relate on that like level, which I love.
Definitely. And I think, yeah, it's just, yeah, you got to share the journey, and the more touch points you have, the better. And, one thing I hear other people talk about is the hard part. One of the hard parts with like growing a business is sometimes you can be a little future focused. You can be like, well, you know, Ripton or Traction will be good when it's this size or when it gets to this point.
Mm-hmm.
But then the juxtaposition is like, then you look back and you're like, man, that was so cool when I did this out of my bedroom kind of thing. It was so raw. But at the time it was kind of terrifying and felt really ghetto, you know? And I remember hearing like an interview with like the cast from Seinfeld, and they were like, they made the most successful show in history. I'm like, yeah, we didn't really enjoy it. Like, it was just really hard, and I didn't really enjoy it when I was making the show.
That's so crazy.
Even though it's so funny and good, you know, and you're like, oh, damn. So, you know, we're probably both pretty early on in our journeys, you know, and I feel like you do a much better job than I do, but at enjoying it along the way a little bit. But do you think about that at all?
I mean, I try and put a huge emphasis on the realization, and I tell my wife this all the time. I'm like, we are so fortunate to get to be around the people that we are, to be able to have a business that we have, like we call it the Traction family. Everybody's around. It's this really unique thing. And like, so I think, you know, earlier on, I did feel that way a lot where I was like, I can't wait to be here. I can't wait to be there. And I had a friend give me some really profound advice one time. And he was just like, hey man, like it doesn't matter where the business is at. There's always going to be something wrong. You're always going to be stressed out about something. So enjoy the process, enjoy where you're at right now. And like, I've been trying to be more intentional about pretty much everything in my life that way. And so it's cool to hear you kind of say like you can see that, because I really appreciate that. And it is something that I have to like, I get down on myself quite a bit about stuff where I have that imposter syndrome. I feel like we don't deserve what's going on. So then I have to remind myself, I'm like, well, we've done the work. We really care about this. We want to be here. We would show up if we weren't making money. We did for a really long time. And yeah, let's just be excited about being in the moment and like the opportunity that's at hand, right? So
yeah, it makes me think of like almost like what you're doing with building your business is like a song. It's like making music, and if you played it, you would never think to like play like music too fast, right? Like rush through the song.
Yep.
It's like the pauses and the silences are a really important part of music. And if building something with soul and building a cool, unique brand is like poetry in that way, or like a song, you need to like go, you know, ride bikes with your friends. You got to go out to dinner. You got to, you know, go on some trips once in a while. You have to find like that cadence that's not like, unless you're trying to do Amazon and just build an empire and be the richest guy in the world. Like, I really think if you're capturing kind of like more of a creative business, it's got to have some pacing to it. And that's something that I'm trying to learn.
Yeah. I think, something like, again, I always relate it back to like mountain bikes or whatever, or, mountains. Just growing up here in Colorado, it's like everything in life is peaks and valleys, right? So like, I think that's a really fun thing for me to have realized over the years. It's like, there's a lot of highs and there's a lot of lows, right? And appreciating all of those things, I think, is where the beauty comes in, because everybody can appreciate the highs because you're standing up on top of the peak and you're looking around and you're seeing everything that's down below and it's beautiful. But it's daunting when you're standing there at the bottom. But in my experience, especially like with mountain biking, like the most fun, or the most like, I feel the best when I'm getting it out of my head when I'm pedaling up the hill. You get to experience all the beauty. You get to see it all. The downhill's great. The view at the top is great, but it's so short-lived. That climb is where you're like, you're earning it and you're getting it out. And I think about that a lot in life and business too. It's like, you don't get to the top of the mountain without, climbing to get there. And you get to see a lot. You get to have fun conversations with your friends. You get to do all the things. You're putting in the work to get there. And then you get the reward coming down, but you got to pedal up the next mountain again. So peaks and valleys, man.
I don't know if you've said this on the podcast because you've been doing it for about a year, right?
Yeah.
Was there like a moment in your life when you knew traction was like going to be a thing?
I think so. Before we did traction, I was running a coffee company for Oscar Blues, and I always thought, I'm like, this is going to be the thing. Like, I'll retire from this. I put my whole soul into this, da 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 da. And when it became apparent that chapter was closing, I was really like, fuck, man, what's next? And so the idea of traction and the namesake behind it of like moving forward, getting a grip, like just really started like resonating with me. And so I think that was the turning point for me of like, okay, like this is going to be the thing. And like we always used to joke around. It's like, dude, we're either going to make this happen or we're going to freaking die trying. And like the first few years, like same thing, what you were describing. It's like, dude, we were just doing it like not ghetto, but like we were just making whatever we could count. And I just remember like there was points in time like where we were taking pictures of the roastery and we were like in our buddy's old wood shop that he rented out to us. And so we couldn't make it look junky in there. So we're like going and buying black canvas and hanging it up and like faking it till we made it. And yeah, it was that point where it was like, there's no turning back. And similar story, it's like COVID hit. And I was like, I got laid off from the job that I was working. And I was like, okay, we're making it work now. Like we don't have a choice. And I haven't looked back since, which is a great feeling.
But it sounds like you had been kind of, tell me if I'm wrong, harnessing some sort of like energy around this like Oscar Blues coffee thing that like it was clicking, you were liking it.
Yeah.
You were like, this is good. And so I need to like now move this into my own thing.
Yeah. I was fortunate to get a taste of freedom. There was a lot of like, I always used to say at Oscar Blues, like, especially in that era of that company, you would always be given enough rope to hang yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, so you had to be accountable because like you were saying earlier, there was really no management or leadership. It was just like, you can do whatever you want and you can be as successful as you want, or you can make, as big of a mess as you want, but like, you got to own either one of those things. And so I think I started working there when I was 23 years old. So very fortunate to have gotten that experience so early in life. That's like very like, getting to see how Dale operated the brewery. It's like there was freedom in that, and like that you can create a lifestyle of your own no matter what. Like, there are really no rules to life. And so seeing that from, a 23-year-old's perspective, I was like, wow, like my eyes just got pulled open. And then taking it to that next level of being like, well, this business isn't mine. I still care about it like it is. And thinking about, well, I guess I can go do that on my own. That would be cool. And so we were able to make that happen. And yeah, so thankful for all those moments and the mistakes that were made and the things that were learned. So cool. So
yeah, I feel like that's pretty young to get a really cool glimpse into like a growing business that's like really making it on a big trajectory.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, that was right around the same time that like Oscar Blues sold too. So like getting to see like this corporate transition and like just very unique of like, hey, like if we ever sold, we would want to approach it this way, and like whatever that would look like, you know what I mean? Like trying to make sure that there was as much like of the core retained, and like we don't ever want that to change. And that it almost drives me away from like ever even wanting to consider if that came up, traction selling, because like I want it to be as real as it can be forever.
Yeah.
Is that something you guys have considered or talked about as you grow? Like,
I feel like it sounds weird when you're so new. It's like, it shouldn't be the reason you start something, I don't think, unless it's like some sort of software hack that's fitting into like some AI trend, or it's like a very like temporal, like crazy, like strategy. I feel like talking about that sort of thing when you're too new, it's just sort of weird, because I feel like people sell when they built something big, first of all, that someone else thinks has value, but they're also like maybe getting a little tired. Like they've been doing it for a long time. And when you're new, you've got all that fresh energy. So you're like, well, I wouldn't sell for $1 billion because what I'm doing is so fun and cool and it's growing. So it's not about that at that point. And I think it's really hard to say what we would do in 20 years from now or something like that. I wouldn't want to sell, but it's also like every year life changes so much, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you're saying too is like, you know, if you were at a point where you're tired and you're like, or you get to a point where like, I can't take this any further. And I've seen that happen with friends that are founders too, where it's like, you get to a point where like, okay, well, I don't even know how we got here. Right. So what happens next? Because I am so lost in this land, because I was just doing something fun and we created this thing, and okay, now what? And for the business to be sustained, I'm sure too, especially at like a large level, like, you know, how many employees do you guys have now?
We're like a loose network of 7.
Okay.
We have like 5 people at the office most days.
So imagine that, but like, you know, on a scale of like 1 to 500 people, and like, you know, how stressful is it to think about like, you know, people are counting on the business to be sustainable. And so then you think about that in the number of hundreds of employees, right? And it's like, fuck, dude, like that's really scary.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like, I see why people do sell a business, because it's like, if you're tired and you're over it, and yeah, it's hard, man.
Yeah.
I could not imagine being faced with that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, like all these companies that are staying independent, do have some special element to them. You know, they have this special sort of connection to what's going on that, it's easy to lose. So, you know, I think as long as you're okay with some things changing, you know, it seems like in the beverage space, acquisitions are able to scale things in a crazy way that is just wild and leads to actually more exposure for the original idea, which is kind of wild. But yeah, we live in such a private equity era. It's a little crazy. I think it's that part of it's definitely nice to just live with blinders and not even think about it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter.
The private equity stuff, that's the stuff that always scares me when I see that rolling around. I'm just like, man, like you see those guys come in and they just kind of rip businesses apart at the seams, because it does come to like, hey, we're focused on the bottom dollar right now. And that's all that matters. And it's like, if you do have a passion-driven, creative business, that comes to a halt almost immediately. And I've seen it happen with friends' businesses along the way. And it's like, whoa, dude, like, I could not imagine what that would do to your soul too. Like when you are passionate about what you're doing and it's just like, yeah, actually, we're not doing any of that anymore. And you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 It's like a drug, though. If someone's like, I'm going to give you all this money, and you're like, oh, that seems like a good idea, but maybe it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. You know, it's like that's the perspective to have. It's like if somebody was going to hand over a lump sum of money, it's like, especially I think societally too, we're taught that like the money is the fix-all to happiness. And
true.
I think it's beautiful now that there are a lot of people who are high level and successful that come forward and they talk about being unhappy. And
yeah, true.
I think there's a lot of beauty in that, because even, you know, as short as a decade ago, that there wasn't very much transparency on those kind of people. And I think as much of a bummer as social media can be sometimes, when you can look at it through that lens and like understand, like, not be like, look at somebody who's wealthy and they're like, why are they sad? They're so wealthy. It's like, no, dude, like that's because, money or things do not create the happiness. And I think it's good to have those kind of perspectives.
Yeah. And like a simple life it has so much value. And I think when you add a lot more stuff and, properties and things, it can get kind of cluttered, Yeah. That's hard to reconcile. Even when you're just a normal American person, like, how many bikes do you really need? How many vehicles do you need? We're already at that level. Everyone's at that, has some of those conundrums.
Yeah. Yeah. When you kind of start, like, cause you're thinking about those things all the time, right? Like if you have 4 cars, you're like, okay, every single one of these cars, like, they have to be like maintained. And like, even if you're not consciously thinking about it, it's still using your brain power. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, you're stressed out maybe because you have too much stuff, which is kind of a fascinating way to look at stuff. So
yeah, and then doing what you're passionate about, like what you're doing right now, is like giving you traction. Like you said, I like that way you described that. And if you sold, you wouldn't have that traction anymore. Yeah, you wouldn't have that reason for being. You would just be like, oh, I started that thing. Now what am I going to do? Go fishing all day? Or like,
Totally. And I've thought about that a lot, and I've had a lot of conversations with people about this over the last few months. It's like, I'm starting to realize, because like ideally, when you're young, you're like, oh man, being on the beach or just doing nothing all the time sounds so cool. And I'm like, I'm the most like bummed out in my life when I'm doing nothing. But I know when I'm like interacting and networking and out making new friends, or something really cool happens with the business, I am so thrilled. And it goes back to that floating feeling I was describing.
You're like surfing
earlier.
a wave.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, I'm starting to be like, okay, those are the things that make me happy. And I think a lot of sadness comes from being routine and doing the same thing over and over and not like experiencing new things. And so, especially for me, I'm like, okay, I just need to keep pushing. And so this, traction is the perfect thing for me. And the idea of that ever not being a thing is heartbreaking, really. So
yeah, growth, like a growth mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's fun. I do really enjoy that, and like changing for flipping the script from being like, okay, like I've got to this point and I don't need to do anything else. It's like, I love the constant pursuit of growth. And I think that's a very fun thing to be almost addicted to,
Yeah.
Craving, like not more, but like craving to create.
What do you see as like your next challenge?
That's a good question, actually. Yeah. I love the flipping of the script. Yeah, I don't know, man. I really think we were talking about it before we started this episode too, is like, we need a bigger roaster. We are super undergun when it comes to roasting. We just took on this YouTube channel project, and we're hopefully, going to be able to get people excited about coffee over there, and that will kind of feed this business. And so we're really looking at, like, we've never taken a loan before. We've never borrowed money. So we're going to need to figure out how to finance a roaster, which is anywhere from $40,000 to $70,000. And we have some employment stuff coming up, bringing people in to start making the dream come true so we can continue to grow the business. So I think that those are some challenges for us right now. Like, what about for you guys? What are you guys seeing out there?
I'm still trying to learn how to work with other people. Kind of like just be a good, just giving people the right amount of direction, but not too much, like you were describing with Oscar Blues. I liked how you were describing that, feeling that out for myself. And what is our challenge? I really I want our denim to get cooler and cooler and better. So just like how to make iterative improvements on things, and make sure I'm excited about them. I think the founder has to be pretty excited about the product specifically, and just being honest with people, like about how I'm feeling. And then giving people a long leash, like you're describing, but making sure it's not going rogue. Like it's not like just this whole different thing that's like, whoa, dude, I didn't know that we were doing that. Having some cohesion with everyone too, and kind of touching back. I kind of want people in I've had a lot of issues with Canada, just the shipping things to like kind of a high taxation country that just sort of like throws a lot of tariffs on whatever we send up there.
Yeah.
I really like Canada as a vibe. I grew up about 20 minutes from Canada, and they're just kind of rugged people up there, you know? And so I want to be able to get them in more Ripton. So we've been trying to strategize about, you know, some sort of fulfillment option up there.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Even though it's a small country, just being able to get some customers going up there. And then I think like maybe one of the themes of this podcast has been balancing hard work with a little bit of me time, a little bit of like getting away. And, you know, I like to go around the summer solstice. I like to just go like ride my bike through a couple towns. Like last year I rode from here to Winter Park and then to Aspen, just all day long, just bike all day through the mountains kind of thing. Just like get away, you know, maybe like 3 or 4 days around the solstice, just like go, just kind of disappear off the face of the earth.
Is the solstice just the time that you do it just for the longer days, or is there any other like reason for that? I love the idea of doing stuff around the solstice. So.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of power. I mean, geez, like I've only been in Colorado for 5 years, but holy shit, like that time of year here is amazing. Like the way you're usually still kind of hiking your bike over some snowbanks, like, and this year was pretty snowy. So you're still sort of navigating a little bit of snow, but it's like hot and there's a lot of wildlife around. The days are super long. And yeah, I don't know. There's just some sort of like mystical power of the solstice. I also, for some reason, just sort of like got to one day in my life, right about that time, where I stopped like using alcohol, and drugs, a lot of things. I was kind of partying really hard, like on a bender sort of. And right about the solstice, I just like had a big night with some friends and nothing bad happened. Like just relatively, it was a big party kind of thing, but I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm like done with that. Just kind of getting my way right now. And so I was like, I'm just going to go ride my bike. I like did a couple rides and, just sort of like my path in my whole life sort of changed at that moment. It was about that time of year. So I always say I imagine like the old path, like I could see it through the trees, you know, when like two roads split, you can sort of see the old road. And so for like a couple months, I could still see my old road, like through the trees, like, oh, like just, I was super social. I was like having a lot of fun, like just doing crazy things. But I wasn't really building a lot. It was sort of like life was a little bit cyclical.
Sure.
And then when I made that decision, life started, it was kind of empty for a little bit because I'd left all my, like a lot of my old routines, and then started down this new path. And then the path started to get further and further apart. And then at some point, like I can't even see my old path anymore. I don't even know what it would look like because I've gone so far in the other direction.
Wow, that's beautiful. Heck yeah, that's super cool. And I love that like now it's kind of like an anniversary, like celebrating that. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I've kind of called it that a couple times, but I also like, even if that wasn't true, it's a really nice time to go. I know like Swift is like a bike packing bag company that does organize camp outs around that time of year. It's a good time of year to go be in nature because it's just so beautiful and the days are so long.
Yeah. I'm genuinely looking forward to that. We were just talking about, I'm like, I really want to do something to celebrate the summer solstice this year. So that's why I was asking. I was like, is it something bigger? So it's cool to hear the backstory to that.
Yeah.
As we get kind of closer to wrapping this up, I'm really curious, like what's one thing about this venture that you really did not expect that's happening?
I think it's way harder than people think. I've always had that mentality of like, oh, they did that, I can do that. And it's a little ignorant, like building anything is really hard. And so I'd say I went in thinking not that I could build like a big successful company, just that I could like create a little mini brand, like sell some stuff out of my room and have an Instagram account. You can really do that. And even just that is harder than you might think. So everything is a lot harder than you think. You know, you might see a downhill mountain biker on Red Bull and be like, I can be like that. And you're like, well, you might be able to sort of do it, but like to do it anywhere near that level is a lot harder than you think. Like a lot more time and effort. And
you're seeing the highlight reels when you're viewing it through that lens, right?
When you just kind of imagine something, you're like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Like, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I wanted to like start a little brand, you know? And it's just a lot harder than you think. And it's been harder than I thought. But it's also been, because it is hard, it's been like really rewarding too. So
that's sick, man. Yeah, it is such a hard journey, but it, like you're saying, those milestones when you click things off, and sometimes you don't even notice them in the moment, right? But when you look back and see where you are now and what you created through this timeline so far, it's pretty cool. I feel like to kind of stand back and like the hindsight piece of that's like, yeah, this has been really hard, but wow, this is cool. So yeah, I appreciate that. Those are awesome words. And if you could go back and give yourself, your 18-year-old self, any piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, there's no rules. Like, I think a lot of education's telling us that there's like these rules. This is the way the world works, but there's really no rules.
Heck yeah, dude, that's awesome. I mean, this kind of rolls into the next question, but if you have any parting motivating words for the people listening, what would they be?
Yeah, just do things on your own terms. Make your own life. It's your life is your sort of tapestry or poem to tell, and it can be so weird and so different than anybody else has ever done before, and it doesn't have to look like anything else.
Heck yeah, that's beautiful, man. This has been so much freaking fun. Thank you so much, dude. I appreciate your time, and yeah, I'm excited to continuing to do really exciting things with you guys. And yeah, I think this next year is going to be really cool for everybody. So yeah, I appreciate your time, and I'm excited to see all the new exciting things. I know you guys are working on some really cool stuff, so yeah, I'm excited to see those hit the shelves, I guess, so to speak, the website. I'm lost for words.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, and likewise, I feel like I like hearing about the YouTube channel and some of the media stuff that you're starting to explore, because I feel like you're just living this crazy story, like you're living this super cool reality, and it can be hard to like capture that all the time and film that and that kind of thing. But I think people want to see more of it, and they want to kind of see what it looks like. And so the more you do that, I think it will hopefully build kind of what you're doing. So I'd love to collaborate and like help out with any of that, but it's definitely really awesome.
Heck yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to team up on some more fun stuff. I'm genuinely looking forward to it, but, well, heck yeah, dude, we'll wrap this thing up and, get back to our Sunday, I guess.
Hell yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. If you're enjoying these episodes on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you're listening to them on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon, please leave us a review. It helps get the word out and allows us to keep this project rolling. Thank you for being a part of the Traction family, and keep being scared of normal. We'll catch you on the next one. We're out.